Kurt Busch lost his final NASCAR appeal Saturday night to get his indefinite suspension rescinded. NASCAR suspended Busch Friday after the release of a Delaware Family Court Commissioner opinion that detailed why that commissioner felt Busch had committed an act of domestic violence against his ex-girlfriend. Busch lost his initial appeal Saturday afternoon and then made a final one Saturday night. NASCAR has no specific penalty for behavioral infractions as they do for technical violations, Stephen A. What is your reaction to them immediately suspending Kurt Busch?
Well, my initial reaction is I wanted to applaud NASCAR for acting expeditiously, particularly considering the fact that, once the judge revealed that it's his or her thoughts, it is what it is. And so you're NASCAR, you have to take action. Once that information became public, you don't want to sit around and wait and be accused of being NFL circa 2015 because of how they handled the whole Ray Rice fiasco. In that regard, I want to applaud them for taking the actions that they took, because clearly they believe, the judge believed, that Kurt Busch committed domestic violence. It's just that simple. And regardless of the appeal or the miscarriage of justice that his lawyer wanted to label it as being, NASCAR is taking the position that that's something that we can't tolerate. We can't tolerate that kind of imagery in our sport. And remember, unlike the other sports, the sponsors, they're the ones that really run this sport. A sponsor turns against you, you're done. It's just that simple. You don't have a collective bargaining agreement where the money is pouring in. No matter what, the player's going to get their share, the owner's going to get their share, whatever the case may be. It's a bit different with NASCAR, and we understand that. But the reason why this story resonated with me, Skip Bayless, is because I want to highlight something that needs to be mentioned, that black folks, myself included, have lamented for many years. Kurt Busch gets cited for domestic violence by a judge. Okay, yes, he gets suspended by NASCAR. We appreciate that. Where's the public outcry? Ray Rice, Greg Hardy, McDonald in San Francisco, even though that case ultimately was dropped. Adrian Peterson with child abuse. Kurt Busch has this happen to him. NASCAR takes the position that they take. But where's the public outcry? Where's the story circulating for days upon days at a time? Now, maybe it's because it's NASCAR and it's not the NFL or whatever the case may be. I don't know what the reason for that is. But America needs to understand that if you happen to be black, when stuff like this happens and you see how it just gets mentioned in the news and it's pointed out there and, it's discussed because ESPN clearly did its job. The other networks clearly did their job in highlighting it. But when you talk about a public uproar, where's the uproar with what Kurt Busch allegedly did? That's just something that I think should be pointed out, because when you talk about a lot of folks in the black community, not everybody, of course, because I can't speak for everybody, but when you think about a lot of black folks and some of the things that we've lamented historically, it's the level of fervor, whether it's vitriol, whether it's fervor, whatever word you want to use, that comes into play when one of these black athletes are put out there front and center for alleged transgressions. I think it should be the same across the board, and there should be a healthy uproar no matter what. And I just didn't get the sense that existed here with Kurt Busch, and that's exactly why I wanted to say what I wanted to say.
Okay, that point definitely needed to be made. But just on balance, a couple of other points do need to be made. I'm glad you brought up ESPN. I thought this network covered that story hard when it broke.
Absolutely.
Was it Saturday or Friday?
Absolutely. Yes, it was Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Saturday.
It led this network. It led the website.
That's right.
Just for the record, and the coverage was thorough, to say the least. Now, the outcry is a whole nother question, which brings me to the point of, obviously, this is auto racing versus the National Football League. Obviously, there's much more passion, there's much more interest nationally in the National Football League than there is in auto race. Not that there isn't a lot of interest in NASCAR, a lot of interest in Indy 500. I watched, I'm not much of a fan, but I will always watch the end of Daytona. I watched it yesterday, the last 5 laps. I just kind of monitor until it's time to watch the last 5. I'll always watch the end of the Indy race, the open wheel race. But again, am I a big fan of NASCAR or open wheel racing at Indy? No, I'm not, Stephen A. And how often do we do topics on NASCAR on this show?
Rarely.
Rarely, if ever.
If
Have
ever.
We've done some Danica topics.
We've done a Danica topic. We've done this when it's relevant that fits our audience.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, you got to keep it in that perspective, and also in the perspective that Kurt Busch. Remember, this was about a restraining order, a protective order. And this was the commissioner of the Delaware Family Court, as Kerry pointed out, who issued this protective order because he thought that Busch's actions, quote, constituted conduct that a reasonable person would find threatening or harmful. That was his opinion that he wrote and delivered on the protective order. But just remember, Kurt Busch was never arrested.
No criminal
and he is still yet to be charged. He might be charged, but it hasn't happened yet. And finally, you brought up Ray Rice, there's obviously no video here. If we had a video of what was alleged that Kurt Busch did to his ex-girlfriend, if it went viral, well, maybe we have a big outcry because we could see it. Sometimes that creates... Like with Greg Hardy, we didn't have a video. With Ray McDonald, we didn't have a video. Now, with Greg Hardy, we had her testimony, which was graphic, I thought, and powerful, and I thought that tilted a lot of outcry and public opinion in the favor of her. But in this case, we don't have the video, and we do have her testimony so far. But again, go ahead.
I get where you're coming from. Let me reiterate the point that I believed I made earlier. In no way did I point the finger at this network or any other network, because I thought they all did an outstanding job highlighting this story, particularly in the aftermath of the whole Ray Rice fiasco. They knew they had better do so. So nobody's pointing the finger at anybody in the media. And I'm fully aware of the fact that, Busch had not been charged with a crime, but the judge did determine his ex-girlfriend in September, he choked his ex-girlfriend and I believe slammed her head against the wall, according to the allegations. Anyway,
that was the allegation.
All I'm trying to say to you is this. I was speaking about this issue particularly due to the public outcry.
Yep.
And the reason why that's relevant, we have to understand that the NBA is popular. The NFL is the #1 sport in America.
Yep.
But I remember when we were talking about this Ray Rice and Kerry Champion, I'll ask you to please join this conversation from this respect. Correct me if I'm wrong, Skip and Kerry. When we were talking about the NFL, one of the things that was pointed out was that Major League Baseball had its issues throughout the years, but that wasn't something that was articulated or disseminated to the public in mass. So I look at it from the perspective that you have an abundance of black athletes in the NFL. You have an abundance of black athletes in the NBA. And those in the black community are making the argument that that appears to be a license for folks to sit there and say, there's a problem going on with these black dudes. When in fact, the problem, as an abundance of domestic violence groups would highlight, there is a problem nationwide, universally, regardless of ethnicity, where these problems are existent is in terms of violence against women. There's no prejudice to it when it comes to race. There are white folks doing it. There are Hispanic folks that are doing it, etc., etc., etc. But it seems to be highlighted when black folks get themselves in trouble. But when other people get themselves in trouble, we don't hear the same kind of noise. And I think that has a problem. That's a problem, because then black folks who have never committed any kind of domestic violence whatsoever get painted with a negative brush because of how they sound or whatever the case may be, because that's the people looking at black men and thinking this is a black male problem. And I'm here to tell you, as a black man who has never put his hand on a woman, I am here to tell you that it doesn't just exist within our community. It's a nationwide issue.
Well, see,
and it needs to be highlighted.
No, Stephen A., you're 100% correct. It is a nationwide problem. Domestic violence is a humanity issue that we haven't discussed. But also, to the same point, the NFL has had a problem with this for years. They did nothing about it.
I totally agree.
They have done nothing about it. And the only reason why it became a concern for them, a top priority, is because of the Ray Rice video. So that's just to balance what we're saying here. But it is a nationwide problem. And I 100% feel your point. You don't want to make it seem like we're just highlighting black men who are in trouble and no one's upset when
that's all I'm saying.
I get your point 100%. Let's leave it there, gentlemen. When we come back, we'll have more First Take after the break.